Zanil was known in the village as a gentle schoolteacher who always put others before herself. She taught children with patience, shared food with neighbors, and believed in doing what was right. Her husband Jabari, however, had a weakness for gambling. At first, Zanil kept quiet, hoping he would change, but when his habits grew worse and he began wasting their savings, she finally spoke up. She begged him to stop, not for herself, but for the children she taught and the respect of the community. Jabari did not take her words kindly. That very night, during a heavy storm, he lost his temper. Blinded by anger, he pushed her outside into the rain, slamming the door behind her. The wind howled and the rain poured down as Zanil stood trembling. Her cries carried through the darkness. Neighbors, hearing her desperate voice, rushed to their windows. Shocked at what they saw, they quickly called the police, worried for her safety. Within minutes, officers arrived and demanded Jabari open the door. At first he refused, but under pressure he let them in. What they found inside was more than anyone expected. Hidden beneath furniture and tucked away in corners were bundles of money that clearly did not belong to him. It wasn't just gambling losses. This was dirty money from shady dealings, money that could ruin lives. The officers collected the evidence while neighbors gathered, whispering in disbelief. Zanil stood shivering in the rain, but her strength shone brighter than the storm. She had spoken out against her husband's wrongdoings, and though it brought her pain, it also uncovered the truth. The village looked at her with admiration. She had not only protected herself, but also exposed a dangerous secret that could have harmed many. From that night, Zanil was no longer just the kind teacher at the school. She became a symbol of courage. People praised her for standing against injustice, and the children she taught looked up to her with even more respect. Jabari, once feared, now stood disgraced, while Zanil's name was spoken with pride across the community. Her bravery turned her pain into power, and her voice became a beacon of hope for others who felt trapped in silence. Amara confronts her husband Ayanda for selling her late father's farmland without consent. She speaks with trembling voice but with firm heart, asking him why he betrayed her trust and disrespected the land that carried her father's memory. Instead of regret, Ayamanda's pride grows larger. He feels exposed and humiliated that his wife dared to question him. In anger, he drags her to the door and locks her outside, leaving her in the cold night while the world around them watches silently. The neighbors, shocked by the cruelty, hear Amara's cries and the heavy sound of the door slamming. They whisper among themselves, unable to believe that a man would treat his wife in such a way. Soon, someone gathers the courage to call the police, knowing this injustice cannot be ignored. Sirens pierce the air, and officers arrive quickly, demanding to know why a woman is left outside her own home. They push their way in, determined to find the truth. Inside the house, they uncover the documents Ayanda tried to hide. The land papers spread across the table tell a very different story from what he claimed. Every word on the page points to one undeniable fact. Amara is the rightful owner of the farmland. It was her father's gift, and her name shines boldly as the legal heir. The officers hold the evidence high, and Ayamanda's confidence crumbles in front of everyone. His scheme to profit from his wife's heritage is laid bare. Amara, though shaken, stands tall as the neighbors gather around. She has been humiliated, but the truth has lifted her higher. The land that carried her father's legacy remains hers, untouched by betrayal. Ayanda loses everything in a single night: his pride, his reputation, and the stolen deal he thought he could keep hidden. The villagers look at Amara with respect, admiring her courage and the dignity she carried even in pain. Her strength becomes an example to others, showing that no voice should be silenced and no heritage stolen in secret. While Ayanda shrinks into shame, Amara walks forward with her head held high, her father's name honored, and her own worth shining brighter than ever. Nia prepares a feast for her 5th wedding anniversary with husband Adewale. She spends the whole day cooking, decorating, and making sure everything looks perfect, her heart full of love and hope for the evening. She wears a beautiful dress chosen especially for the occasion, believing it will be a night to remember. Guests arrive, laughter fills the home, and the table shines with food prepared with care. Yet behind her smile, Nia feels a shadow of doubt. During dinner, she gathers courage and gently asks Adewale about his late-night absences. Her voice is calm, but her eyes search for honesty. Instead of answers, anger rises in him. The question strikes his pride, and in front of shocked guests, he loses control. Dragging her to the door, he locks her outside while she stands in her celebration dress, trembling in the night. The same neighbors who heard her laughter hours earlier now hear her muffled cries, and whispers spread quickly through the air. The guests, stunned and uneasy, cannot ignore what has happened. Calls are made, and soon flashing lights appear as the police arrive. Officers question Adewale and enter the house, determined to know the truth behind his rage. What they discover shocks everyone. Hidden in another room is a woman, silent and ashamed, his secret affair revealed before all. The betrayal is no longer rumor or suspicion. It is undeniable fact. The crowd outside grows as word spreads, and all eyes turn toward Nia, still standing strong despite the humiliation. Tears threaten, but she refuses to let them fall. The pain in her heart is heavy, yet with every breath she chooses dignity over despair. Adewale's lies and cruelty have been exposed, and his pride is shattered in front of family, friends, and neighbors. Nia walks away that night, not as a broken wife, but as a woman who faced truth with courage. She leaves the house behind, but she carries her strength with her. The feast meant to celebrate love instead uncovers betrayal, yet it also reveals her power to rise above. While Adewale stands disgraced, Nia moves forward with her head high, the truth on her side and a brighter future waiting. Kemi, a market woman, calls out her husband Tay for stealing her earnings. She works from dawn to dusk, selling food and small goods with her bare hands, her sweat building the coins that feed their home. One evening, after counting her daily sales, she notices the money missing again. Her heart pounds as she realizes the truth. Her own husband has been dipping into her hard-earned savings. In front of the market crowd, she gathers her courage and confronts him. Her voice trembles but her words strike deep, exposing his greed before all. Instead of shame, Tay's anger rises. His pride wounded by her boldness, he grabs her and drags her out of the shop, locking her outside while traders and customers watch in silence. The humiliation burns, but Kemi refuses to bow her head. She pounds on the door, calling for justice, her tears mixing with strength as the crowd murmurs in disbelief. Whispers grow louder until the entire marketplace erupts with voices demanding answers. The traders, mostly women who know the struggles of survival, stand together. They protest loudly, calling out the cruelty they have just witnessed. Their cries echo across the stalls, reaching beyond the marketplace until the police are called. Officers arrive, pushing past the crowd and forcing Tay to open the shop. Inside, they search carefully, determined to find the truth behind his actions. What they uncover shocks everyone. Hidden in bags and boxes are not only Kemi's missing earnings, but also money belonging to other women. The scheme is clear. Tay has been secretly robbing hardworking traders, exploiting their trust and destroying their efforts to care for their families. Gasps ripple through the market as the evidence piles up, and the mask of a loving husband falls apart. Kemi stands tall as the officers lead him away, her pain turning into power. The women cheer her bravery, realizing her voice has broken the silence that held them back. Inspired by her courage, they raise their fists and demand fair treatment, no longer willing to be victims of deceit. The scandal that began with stolen coins becomes a turning point, uniting the market women in strength. Kemi, once humiliated in front of the crowd, becomes their hero, the woman who sparked justice with her truth. Lindai, wife of Councilman Kunnel, exposes his corruption. For months she had noticed strange documents, secret meetings, and money flowing in and out without reason. At first she kept quiet, but when she discovered that the funds meant for schools, hospitals, and clean water had vanished, her heart could no longer stay silent. She confronted him in their mansion, her voice steady but her eyes burning with disappointment, telling him that the people deserved to know the truth. Kunnel, furious at being challenged, tried to intimidate her. His pride as a councilman could not bear the thought of a woman, his own wife, destroying his image. In a fit of rage, he dragged her to the door and locked her outside, hoping to silence her cries. The night air was heavy, and her voice carried across the compound as she begged for justice. The security guards, hearing the commotion, could not ignore it. They called the police, knowing something was very wrong. When the officers arrived, they questioned Kunnel and demanded access to the house. He resisted, but their authority was stronger, and they pushed past him. Inside, they searched every corner until they uncovered the hidden documents. Files and receipts piled high, each one showing stolen community funds diverted into his personal accounts. The truth was undeniable. Connell had betrayed the very people who trusted him to lead. Outside, Lindive stood surrounded by neighbors and guards, her dignity unshaken despite the humiliation. When the officers carried the evidence out, whispers spread like fire. The councilman who had promised progress was nothing more than a thief in fine clothes. The community gasped, their anger rising, but their eyes turned toward Lindive with respect. She had been the one brave enough to speak, even when it meant standing against her husband's power. As Connell was taken away, Lindive's strength shone brighter. She was no longer just his wife, she became the voice of the people, a whistleblower who refused to let corruption destroy her town. Her courage gave hope to those who had lost faith, and her name was spoken with pride. What began as a lonely fight in her home ended as a victory for her entire community, proving that one honest voice could break even the strongest chains of deceit. Ayanda dances at the town festival, but confronts her husband Oba for flirting openly. She had dressed with joy, her spirit lifted by the music, the drums, and the laughter of neighbors all around. The festival was meant to be a night of unity and happiness. Yet her heart grew heavy when she saw Oba laughing too closely with other women, his hands wandering where they did not belong. She walked to him, her voice firm but calm, asking why he chose disrespect on a night meant for celebration. Instead of listening, Oba's pride swelled. The crowd's eyes on them made him feel exposed, and he could not bear the shame of being corrected in public. Rage replaced reason, and when they returned home, he forced her outside the compound, locking the gate as if her voice could be silenced. Ayanda stood in the night, her beautiful dress damp from the evening air, her dignity wounded but her spirit still unbroken. The sound of her calls reached officers patrolling nearby. The police, on duty to secure the festival, hurried to the compound to see what had caused such distress. They questioned Oba, but his defiance only raised their suspicion. Insisting on checking inside, they pushed past him and began searching. What they uncovered was far beyond a domestic quarrel. Hidden away in his home were bags filled with money meant for the festival, funds stolen from the community, stolen from the very people dancing outside. The discovery shocked the officers and the neighbors who had gathered. Whispers spread quickly, turning into angry voices. Oba's charm, once used to impress, was now seen as nothing but lies. He had not only disrespected his wife, but also betrayed the trust of his entire town. Ayanda, though hurt, stood taller as the truth unfolded. She had been humiliated, but the very act meant to silence her revealed his darkest secret. The officers took Oba away in handcuffs, and the same neighbors who once pitied her now looked at her with respect. She was no longer seen as the quiet wife of a respected man. She became the symbol of truth that could not be hidden. On that festival night, the drums continued to beat, but their rhythm carried a new story. The downfall of betrayal and the rise of Ayanda's dignity. Kayamika finds out her husband Femi secretly helps his sister scam widows. She had always trusted him, believing that their marriage was built on honesty, but one evening while sorting through some papers, she discovered hidden messages and receipts that revealed a cruel truth. The money he claimed was from business was actually stolen from grieving women who had already lost everything. Shock filled her heart, but she gathered courage to confront him, hoping he would confess and change. Instead of admitting his crime, Femi's pride exploded. His face darkened with rage as her words cut through his lies. Rather than listen, he dragged her toward the door and pushed her outside into the darkness, locking it firmly behind her. The night was cold, and her cries echoed down the street, carrying her pain into every home nearby. Neighbors stirred from their sleep, whispering about the cruelty they had just heard, and soon the noise reached a breaking point. The police were called, arriving quickly as her screams had woken the whole street. They demanded to be let in, and after forcing their way through, they searched the house. What they uncovered was far worse than anyone had imagined. Stacks of documents, secret accounts, and messages pointed to an organized fraud ring run by his sister, with Femi standing by her side in the deceit. Every file they opened revealed another widow cheated out of her last hope, another life broken by their greed. Kayamika, still standing in the street with tears on her cheeks, listened as the officers carried the evidence out. The neighbors who once pitied her now looked at her with admiration. She had spoken the truth even when it cost her comfort. And because of her courage, the fraud that had destroyed many lives was finally exposed. As Femi and his sister were taken away, the chains of her marriage broke as well. No longer trapped in silence, Kayamika was free. The community stood by her side, offering comfort and respect, praising her for the strength she had shown. Though her heart had suffered betrayal, her voice had brought justice. From that night on, she was not seen as a victim but as a woman who faced darkness and brought the truth into the light. Zuri returns late from work, soaked in rain, and asks her husband Malik why he sold her jewelry. Her clothes cling to her skin, her hair wet and heavy, but her voice is steady as she faces him. Those pieces were not just ornaments. They carried memories of her mother and her wedding day. She wants answers, but instead of remorse, Malik's eyes flash with anger. He feels cornered by her questions, his pride wounded by her courage to confront him. In a burst of rage, he pushes her out the door and slams it shut, leaving her shivering in the storm. The rain beats down harder, and thunder rolls across the sky as she stands helpless, her cries echoing into the night. Lights flicker on in nearby houses, neighbors peeking through curtains. Their shock turns quickly into action, and soon voices rise as they decide enough is enough. Someone calls the police, unwilling to let her suffer alone. When the officers arrive, they find Zuri trembling at the gate. They knock and demand entry, but Malik tries to resist, his arrogance pushing him to hide the truth. The police force their way in, determined to uncover what he is hiding. As they search the house, they find receipts and slips tucked away, showing that her beloved jewelry was pawned not for family needs, but to fuel his addiction to illegal betting. The evidence is undeniable. The neighbors gather around, their murmurs filling the air as the story unfolds. Their eyes shift from Zuri, standing wet but proud, to Malik, who now looks small in his shame. The man who once walked the street with false pride is unmasked, while the woman he tried to silence gains the sympathy of everyone watching. Zuri, though her heart aches, lifts her head. She knows her dignity is greater than any jewelry. She has lost her treasures but gained the truth, and the community stands firmly with her. Malik is left in disgrace, his lies and weakness exposed, while she becomes a symbol of strength. That rainy night, what began with humiliation ends with respect, as Zuri walks forward with courage, leaving behind the storm that once trapped her. Namsa questions her husband Ayobami for hiding her late mother's sacred necklace. The piece was not only gold and beads. It carried blessings, prayers, and the love of generations before her. She noticed it missing from the wooden box where her mother had kept it safe, and her heart tightened with fear. When she asked Ayobami about it, his face hardened, and anger quickly rose. Instead of answering her with truth, he shouted, refusing to admit his betrayal. The argument grew louder until relatives in the house turned their heads. Embarrassed and furious that she dared confront him in front of family, Ayobami dragged her to the door and shoved her outside. The lock clicked, leaving her in the yard while whispers spread inside. Relatives exchanged shocked glances, their hearts unsettled at the cruelty they had witnessed. Her tears mixed with the dust on her face, but her voice refused to remain quiet. She called out for help, her pain echoing through the compound. Unable to stay silent, one of the relatives picked up the phone and called the police. When the officers arrived, they demanded that Ayobami open the door. Reluctantly, he let them in, hoping he could hide the truth. But the search began, and within minutes, the officers uncovered the necklace, carefully wrapped and hidden away with papers that revealed his plan to sell it. The sacred treasure that was meant to stay in the family forever was about to be traded for selfish gain. The sight of the necklace in the officers' hands brought gasps from the relatives. Their disappointment in Ayobami filled the air, while their admiration for Namsa grew. She had stood firm, even when humiliated, and now her voice had protected the legacy of her late mother. The very piece he tried to steal shone brighter than ever in her hands, a reminder of the strength passed down through her family. As the police confronted Ayobami, his pride collapsed under the weight of disgrace. The relatives surrounded Namsa, offering comfort and respect, praising her for her courage. That night she saved more than jewelry, she saved history, memory, and honor. Though the betrayal cut deep, her bravery turned the pain into victory. Namsa held the necklace close, knowing her mother's spirit lived on through her strength and refusal to stay silent. Ayesha defends her little daughter when her husband Say yells at her. The little girl had only asked a simple question, her small voice trembling with fear, but Say's temper flared, his harsh words cutting into the silence of their home. Ayesha could not stand by and watch her child suffer, so she stepped forward, shielding her daughter with her arms and demanding that he stop. Her voice was firm, but her heart beat with pain as she begged him to treat their child with love instead of cruelty. Say, blinded by anger and pride, refused to listen. In his rage, he dragged both mother and daughter to the door and forced them outside, slamming it shut behind them. The night was dark and cold, the street empty, and Ayesha wrapped her arms tightly around her little girl to keep her warm. The child's sobs carried through the quiet, her cries piercing the silence until they reached the ears of someone passing by. A police officer on patrol stopped when he heard the sound of a child weeping in the night. Following the cries, he found Ayesha holding her daughter tightly outside the locked home. Shocked by what he saw, the officer called for backup and demanded entry into the house. Once inside, the search revealed more than just anger. It uncovered years of hidden abuse. Marks, torn belongings, and documents showed a long history of violence and neglect that Sei had tried to keep secret. As word spread, neighbors who had once only suspected were now faced with undeniable evidence of the pain Ayesha and her daughter had endured. Their hearts turned to her with sympathy, and anger rose against the man who had caused so much suffering. As the officers led Sei away, his power dissolved into disgrace. Ayesha stood with her child clinging to her side, her spirit shaken but her strength unbroken. The authorities granted her custody and protection, ensuring her freedom at last. What began with fear ended with hope, as mother and daughter walked away from the darkness together. That night, Ayesha's courage gave her child a new life, and the community saw her not as a victim, but as a mother who fought with love and won. Hi friends, thank you for staying till the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time, bye.